Skateboarding video games released under the Tony Hawk banner between the years of 1999 and 2007 were undoubtedly the gold standard in arcade-style skateboarding experiences. But as the industry evolved, there was a hole in the market for a more realistic skateboarding experience in gaming. The development team at EA Black Box took notice of this and began working on their debut skateboarding title for the 7th console generation. Today, we'll be looking back on Skate. Since the inception of skateboarding, the sport's popularity has both risen and fallen with each decade. I was a very casual skater for many years, but I got really serious about it, debatably during the peak of its popularity, around 2004. I wasn't great at skating, but I did have a knack for video games. And while the Tony Hawk games delivered an incredible skateboarding experience, I wanted something with a bit more realism. I specifically remember removing all the stat points from my character in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 in an attempt to replicate real-world skateboarding physics. But it just didn't feel right. Those games delivered an arcade-style experience. Have you ever seen someone grind on telephone wires? I definitely haven't. Well, my hopes and dreams of a grounded skateboarding game would be realized when I watched the 3rd episode in the 1st season of Rob & Big in 2006. Rob & Big traveled to Vancouver, Canada, to complete motion capture for an upcoming skateboarding game, simply titled Skate. This appeared to be exactly what I wanted out of a skateboarding game. The episode portrayed Rob playing the game, but it appears that either he was pretending to play and this was pre-rendered footage, or this was a very early build that was modified before the game's final release, because this looks nothing like the final product. Either way, I was so excited to get my hands on this game. The idea of a skateboarding game that appeared to have the same polish as the Tony Hawk series just blew my mind. Sure, other skateboarding games did exist, but the only ones I played at that point in time were 3 Extreme and Street Skater 2, both of which I rented from Blockbuster after having played at least 1 or 2 games in the Tony Hawk series, so they really paled in comparison. Now that I've given you a little bit of personal history and perspective, we'll look into the development of Skate. In 2005, a group of employees at Canadian studio EA Black Box, most notably Chris Perry, Jay Bomber, and Scott Blackwood, began conceptualizing a skateboarding video game that featured realistic physics, true-to-life camera angles, and trick controls that were deeper and more complex than anything seen before. EA Black Box had previously worked on several sports titles, mostly in the NHL series, and racing games in the Need for Speed franchise, never trying their hand at a skateboarding title. Going into the project, producer Scott Blackwood had a simple philosophy for his team. Pretend that nobody had ever made a skateboarding game before. What would we do? Development of the game started from the ground up, with prototyping taking place on whiteboards and paper. The control scheme was the first aspect that the team came up with, throwing out any and all ideas of controls in skateboarding games that had come before, instead going with what would be referred to as the Flick-It control system, in which the player flicks the right control stick in specific directions to perform various tricks. Working with the studio's lead programmer, a prototype was developed within only a few days. The team was happy with the initial results and development went full speed ahead. Within about 2 years, Skate was released on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 to critical acclaim. The game was praised for its organic controls, beautiful visuals, and amazing presentation, although some critics found that the controls were too complicated and suggested that casual gamers would be alienated as a result. Clearly, the few mixed reviews the game received didn't matter, as it went on to outsell that year's installment in the Tony Hawk series, Tony Hawk's Proving Ground, nearly 2-1, knocking the best-selling skateboarding video game franchise from the top spot for the very first time. As I mentioned, I was a casual skater, but Skate allowed me to do tricks and maneuvers that I only dreamed about doing myself. I first played the game when the demo released on the Xbox Live Marketplace in September of 2007. The demo version of the game featured a lengthy tutorial, which, unless I'm mistaken, you were forced to go through every time you replayed the demo. The demo was also limited to 30 minutes of play before you were kicked off and forced to start it up again, but that didn't matter. I remember replaying the demo several times leading up to the release of the full game. I actually played the demo within days of acquiring an Xbox 360, so I can't really put into words just how blown away I was by Skate. To me, this was my first next-gen experience of that console generation. Honestly, even while capturing gameplay footage for this video in 2020, the game's graphics still look really good. And remember, This is nearly a 15-year-old game. The design used for both the main menu and in-game menus had that distinct late 2000s almost scrapbook style of presentation, but it still holds up really well. What doesn't hold up is the use of a T-Mobile Sidekick for the in-game messaging system. But it was the hottest phone at that time. Ironically, even Tony Hawk had his own version of the phone. I really like the intro video, in which your character gets hit by a bus and is rushed to the hospital. Every pro skater involved in the game is shown in that video. Your character requires surgery to restore their appearance, which segues into the Create a Skater menu. It was a really unique approach that hadn't really been done before. And before you know it, you're thrust into the world of Skate. You meet your buddy Shingo, voiced by the actor who played Rufio from Hook, play a game of Skate, record some footage, pick some sponsors, mess with old ladies,
Is this the end of I hope Granny got Medicaid.
own some spots, skate some competitions, take photos for magazines, do some downhill races, and that's basically the entire game. The mission structure in Skate was almost laser focused on your character and their career, unlike the Tony Hawk games where the missions had a more humorous approach. For example, in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4, you were tasked with things like sketching a professor's vehicle to catch a carjacker or collecting pink elephants for a homeless man, whereas the missions in Skate were focused on the tricks you performed and nothing else. Like the mission where you need to do a 360 flip to frontside crooked grind on a bench, which for some reason took me like 30 tries. That's where the true appeal lies in Skate, working towards landing a specific trick or combo, and finally doing it after several attempts. With the breakout success of Skate, it's no surprise that additional games were developed. Skate 2 and a spin-off called Skate It, along with Skate 3, were released over the next few years. While it was exciting to see the beginnings of a new skateboarding franchise, things weren't so great over at Activision, EA's direct competition. The Tony Hawk franchise was getting stale, no thanks to its yearly release schedule. I'll admit, I was one of the people who jumped ship on the Tony Hawk series and purchased Skate upon release. Tony Hawk's Proving Ground didn't appear to be that much of a departure from Project 8, so I didn't pick that game up until a few years after its release. And once I played it, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. Unfortunately, after the poor sales of Tony Hawk's Proving Ground, Activision decided to take the series in a new direction. Development duties were transferred from Neversoft to Robomoto, whose first outing was Tony Hawk Ride. I remember being mildly excited for Ride, but deep down I knew that the skateboard deck motion control gimmick wouldn't work correctly, and it didn't. Robomoto went on to develop 3 more games in the Tony Hawk series: Shred, Pro Skater HD, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. All of which are, well, not looked back on very fondly.
That's you. You look good. You're a little dead in the eyes. You look, maybe you've killed some people.
Seemingly putting the final nails in the coffin for the Tony Hawk video game series. As for Skate, EA attempted to give the games a yearly release schedule, similar to their mainline sports titles, as Skate 2 and Skate 3 were released only a year and 4 months apart from each other. The two titles weren't different enough to merit yearly installments. Clearly, EA didn't learn from the mistakes of Activision. As of July 24th, 2020, Skate 3 sold about 2.68 million copies. While that is an impressive number, EA's mainline sports titles blow that number out of the water. Not to mention, as Tony Hawk put it,
it got triggered to reinvent the wheel every time too, you know, and then once EA Skate came out and it was a whole different control scheme,
right,
that split the market.
Totally.
And then, you know, we both had a good run, but I think both companies were like, we're fighting for a smaller piece of the pie, and it's just not.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why it's not happening.
I don't know.
But things are looking up. As of December 2020, skateboarding video games are no longer few and far between. Skate 4 has officially been announced. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2 released a few months ago to critical acclaim, and indie studios are putting out titles like Skater XL, Session, and the most anticipated title of all, Skatebird. It's a great time to be a fan of skateboarding games. That'll do it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you feel so inclined, please give the video a thumbs up and click on both the subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified of future uploads. Thank you for watching today's video, and I'll see you on the next one.